Hello there. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages of the morning's newspapers as they arrive. It's time to see what is making headlines with the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. They'll be joining us from now until just before midnight. So let's have a look at what is on some of those front pages in the morning. And we'll start with the Metro. Donald in the dock is the headline, covering that court appearance of former President Trump in New York. The Financial Times reports that Trump entered a plea of not guilty to those 34 charges in what the paper describes as a day of drama. The Guardian has a similar take, while also mentioning the judge's warning that Trump must not say anything which inflames civil unrest. The Star uses one of the former president's made-up words to describe the trouble that he's in, while the Eye says that it's Mr. Trump's day of reckoning. In some other news, the Daily Express reports that Prince George is to take on a major role in the King's coronation next month. And The Sun says that the title Queen Consort has been dropped from Queen Camilla's name in the invitations for the coronation. And to remind you that by scanning that QR code that you see on your screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch along with us. All right, well, as I said, we're joined tonight by the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Special Advisor Salma Shah. Steve, Salma, good to have you with us and good evening to you both. I mean, one story in town on all the front pages. Let's go through it in order. Let's start with the front page of The Guardian, and we'll start off with you, Steve. And they've got the picture there, the one still image that we got from that court in Manhattan as Trump pleads not guilty to those 34 felony charges.
Yeah, and the photo is, of course, extraordinary because, again, you think of this figure just a short time ago, President of the United States, wielding huge amounts of power, commanding all in front of him in the White House in Washington. And there he is in court. And we have seen with the fall of President Nixon, with Watergate, a drama, power removed from a person at such speed. It was dramatic at the time. But this, in a way, is even more potent, the juxtaposition of memory, you know, Trump in the White House and now Trump in court, and still, of course, an aspiring presidential candidate.
And Salma, I presume you're watching along intently like all the rest of us, and you will have seen the few sort of fleeting images we got of Donald Trump. But it's not the Donald Trump that I remember, sort of the bombastic, more sort of aggressive-looking Donald Trump. He looks a bit chastened. I don't know if you agree.
Well, he does, but I imagine that he's got lots of strategists and advisors choreographing, exactly as we've just heard from your correspondents over in the States, exactly what he's going to do. And as Steve says, this is not somebody who's just a former president. This is somebody who is still in the race to gain the Republican nomination in order to fight against Joe Biden for the presidency next year. So all of this is actually very carefully orchestrated. And at the arraignment, the judges have been concerned about the kind of rhetoric that is going to be used and what kind of messaging is going to be put out there to potentially incite people to Donald Trump's cause. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. But there is very much that mind of how this is going to play in to what happens in the presidential nomination for the Republicans.
Well, let's stick with that thought, Salma. We'll bring up the front of The Eye, which is kind of exactly that idea. It's got a picture of Trump just before he walks into court. The headline on the front page of The Eye tomorrow morning is The Reckoning. And that kind of plays into this idea, you know, he is running for president again. He's ahead in the polls, has raised £7 million since he was indicted. But is this going to be sort of the make or break moment for this guy?
Is that for me? Yeah.
Sorry, Salma. Sorry, we'll carry on with Salma, Steve. We'll come to you in a sec. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, all I was going to say, and Steve probably has far more interesting insights into this, but the only thing that I have found quite interesting about what's happening is that his nearest competitor is Ron DeSantis, and he seems to now be clear of him by a fair few points in the polls. On the Republican nomination. So it's not entirely, and this is the madness of it, it's not entirely clear that being indicted for felonies is something that is going to be negative for Donald Trump in this race.
Now, and Steve, we were hearing earlier as well from, I think, Michael Wolff saying that in Trump camp in Mar-a-Lago, they're already printing preparing to print the T-shirts with his mugshot on.
Yeah. And that side of it, the political side, he remains in control. He can decide what he says at this rally later on. He can command support amongst his entourage, his immediate entourage, and his devotees in the United States. But what makes this more complicated is he's not in charge of the legal process, which can go in all kinds of different ways. And so you have a aspiring candidate who can arrange rallies, who can frame arguments that he is kind of a martyr because of the Democrat establishment out to get him. All that's in his control. But the reason why it's interesting that you thought he looked a bit shaken in that photo in the court, and I agree. He is partly bombastic and self-confident, but not wholly. That, I sense, is, there he is sitting there in that court, not in control. And so there are two parallel things going on. He will try and make the best of it, but how this legal process pans out is not in his hands.
No, absolutely right. And that is interesting as well, because I don't know if you guys were watching earlier when my colleague Mark Austin was speaking to Anthony Scaramucci. Scaramucci made the point that Trump is there on his own. His family haven't been there with him, and sort of laying out this idea that perhaps he might be getting a little isolated at the moment as he pushes forward with another bid for the White House. Let's bring up the front of the Financial Times, Steve, and I'll stick with you if we can, just to sort of stick with the legal drama that we saw playing out today. And you will have seen, following the indictment being unsealed, Alvin Bragg reading out sort of the list of charges. And one thing that really struck me when I heard all of that was that for some of the crimes that the prosecutor said have been committed, Donald Trump's signature is on the checks.
Yeah, that's called evidence. And which way all this is going to go. But that's what makes this legal dimension so complex. And I heard your interview with Scaramucci, and I was interested. I mean, Scaramucci is no Trump fan these days, but I was interested in his sense of a figure who's becoming more politically isolated. But what is clear is it's definitely him versus the court in the dynamic that's been played out today, and these 34 charges, with, we hear, more to come on other themes. Now, there are some who say, and we've heard it on Sky News during the evening, that this is going to play to his advantage in the short term. But I wonder whether in the medium and long term, that will be the way it pans out.
Yeah. And Salma, just a thought then from you on the sort of the circus of all of this. I don't know if you, as I said, we're watching it. We saw the cars driving along, we saw the planes taking off, the planes taxiing. We're now waiting for him to land. We've got the flight tracker, if anyone wants to see that, as the plane makes its way to West Palm Beach as well. The Trump circus has rolled right back into town, hasn't it? And we're going to be sort of glued to this each and every time that this goes back to court.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, obviously the front pages of the papers are slightly behind, as you say. The flight tracker is moved on slightly because it is about the former President Trump going off to address this rally. But not only is this a historic occasion because it's the first time a former president is facing criminal charges, severe criminal charges, but it's also because we are, in many ways, addicted to the soap opera. We've seen it with some respects in this country with Boris Johnson, and we see it with, lots of very charismatic, if I could put it that way, leaders of democratic societies. And he's just another example, perhaps the best example, of how he sucks all the oxygen out of a room when he's in the media fray. So there's going to be so much more of this for weeks, months.
All right. The next court appearance is sometime in December, we think. All right, we're waiting, as we said, 1:15 UK time is when Trump's going to be speaking in West Palm Beach. Salma, Steve, for now, thank you very much. More from you later. But I just want to bring our viewers the latest from Mr. Trump as he's on that plane, on his way back to West Palm Beach. He's posted on his website, Truth Social, and I'll read it out to you in full. You can see it there. Alvin Bragg, that's the DA, shuts down New York City, brought in 38,000 police officers, and will spend an estimated $200 million of New York City funds for a totally legal $130,000 NDA. On top of all of that, the Ninth Circuit Court's just awarded me $122,000 over the $500,000 already awarded from Stormy Horseface, in quotation marks, Daniels. He goes on to say, just lifted off at Palm Beach. We'll be delivering remarks tonight at Mar-a-Lago at 8:15 Eastern. The hearing was shocking to many in that they had no surprises and therefore no case. Virtually every legal pundit has said that there is no case here, that there was nothing done illegally. Well, that is Donald Trump posting on Truth Social in the last few minutes, laying out his argument that he's done nothing illegal. We'll see how that plays out. We're going to have plenty more analysis on Donald Trump's appearance in that courtroom in New York City in the past few hours, and of course have more coverage of what's on the front pages of the morning's newspapers, including this on the front page of the Daily Star tomorrow. Bigly trouble, orange man baby makes history, the Star tells us. Hello and welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with us are the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the former Conservative Party Special Advisor Salma Shah. Salma, Steve, let's just finish off on this segment about Donald Trump, and we'll go to the front page of the Daily Star, which resurrects one of Donald Trump's made-up words, one of my favourites from his time during his presidency. The Star says that he's in bigly trouble. And I guess, Salma, this just kind of... It just reiterates as well and sort of reminds us as well sort of how farcical some of Donald Trump's tenure in the White House was.
Not just that, but also I think a chapeau is owed to the red top tabloids who can actually give this in such succinct way a description of what's going on, because I think they also, above that big headline, refer to him as the orange man baby.
I deliberately avoided that bit.
But it is quite nice, even with a serious story, to bring some levity to it and actually sort of make it appeal to a different audience. But, you know, Steve and I were discussing in the break how it's amazing how, you know, every front page that we're going to look at for tomorrow is going with this story.
Yeah, it really, and as we were saying just before the break, Steve, there, it really is going to dominate our collective attention for quite a while, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite unusual for every front page to be dominated by this one story. I think the last time it happened in the UK was with the fall of Truss, where you had the Star joking about the lettuce lasting longer, and obviously the kind of broadsheets focusing on it as well. Here we have every paper, from the Star to the FT, leading on it. And we were sort of discussing, is it because his name still sells papers? Or is it, and I suspect it's a combination of the two, a real sense that this is a historic moment when a very recent president, you know, as I was saying in the first half, you know, exerting all the might of the presidency, albeit in his chaotic way, now in court. We haven't had this before, so it's a big moment.
We most certainly have not. All right, let's just move on then to the other story, and just challenging the idea of this on leading on all the front pages, because the Sun do have it on their front page, but it's not their lead story, their top story. So you can see on the front page of the Sun here is a picture of Camilla, Queen Consort, our new queen. The headline there, Palace drop Camilla's consort's title on coronation invitation. Before we discuss this as well, guys, I want to bring you some breaking news that we've had, that Joe Biden has confirmed that his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, will be attending the coronation, representing the United States. So, Salma, let's just pick up on then the front page of the Sun, the new queen, the title being used for the first time officially.
Yes, and obviously it's lovely to hear that the president is sending such senior representation to the coronation. But this is a really interesting story because it's uniquely British, a uniquely British saga, which is what was going to happen to the Duchess of Cornwall when King Charles is acceded to the throne. And, you know, she was going to be known as Princess Consort. There was Queen Consort, but now it is official. She will be known as Queen. And I think that is a testament to the fact that this long journey we've all been on with her in the public eye, and the fact that people possibly are quite ready to accept her as the Queen. So I think it's an important, small but significant moment, I think, in British culture.
Yeah, and Steve, you're nodding along to some of that, and Salma's right. It does feel like it's been a long journey, hasn't it? But I guess that it feels like it's kind of fitting now, and absolutely right.
I'm nodding along out of politeness because, to be honest, I haven't been following the journey. I just can't get interested in these stories. I
No
know
worries.
everyone else is gripped by them. So I was just kind of being polite. What I do find interesting, Sam and I were here, I think, on the eve of, or certainly in the build up to the Queen's funeral. There was a lot of talk about how an era was over, the royal family would struggle to adapt when such a figure as the Queen had died. And yet here we are preparing for a coronation. And I think actually these transitions can be made relatively straightforwardly because there isn't this sort of public pressure on these people as there are with elected politicians who are scrutinized in much more depth and with much greater hostility. I know there are many storms around the royal family and Harry and all the rest of it, but honestly, compared with what elected politicians get, they do okay.
All right, Steve, Salma. Stephen, I won't be asking what you're doing on the 6th of May because I think I know what the answer to that will be. All right, Steve, Salma, I really appreciate your time. We'll have more from you later on.